One of the most important things you can learn when you're coding are loops. Now, what are loops? Well, it's exactly like what it sounds. A loop is something that is used to repeat a section of code over and over again for some unknown number of times if you don't set the time. So you can set a loop to be endless, and that will seemingly crash your program. Or you can set a loop to go a certain amount of time. So with that said, there's different kinds of loops, like a while loop or a do loop, something like that. What we're going to do is we're going to learn a few loops and some of the more conventional loops that most people would use in any coding programming language. So it really doesn't matter the language that you're using. Most all languages have some kind of loop that they give to you so you can use in your application. So let's go ahead and get started. Right now I have Visual Basic selected inside of Visual Studio. I've already started the Visual Studio program and you should have already downloaded that and installed it. Over here will be your recent project templates. And you'll see on the side here, these say C#, C++. So you got to be careful when you're selecting these. You got to make sure you go up here and you select Visual Basic. We want a Windows application. And you can choose a console application, or you can choose, let's say, like a WPF application. But for what we're going to be using this for, we're going to be using it for just a console application. So I'm going to go over here and select console app.NET Core. You can use framework or application. These are fine, but really, if we want to be up to date on the new way Windows is going and the new way VB is going and .NET is going, you want to go ahead and use the core. So I'm just going to select this and I'm going to hit next. Go ahead and give this a name. So here we are, and this is how it's going to start. Over here on the side here, you should be familiar with the setup that we have here. So I'm not going to go into the UI or anything. So let's talk about this program. Right now, this program writes to the console, hello world. I'm just going to run this. I'm going to hit play here. And I can see here it says hello world. That's pretty good. Let me go ahead and close that. If you run your console application and it doesn't show up or it just closes, basically what you want to be able to do is go here and start without debugging, Control F5, and it'll stay there. So I'm going to go ahead and paste the do loop here. Right here I have this variable. So I created this variable called A, and it's an integer and it equals 10. So here is the do loop. The do loop processes from this point and it sets it inside of this area here. So this should read to the console, it should read value of A colon 10. And then A will equals A plus 1. So then A becomes 11. And so this says loop while A is less than 20. And it stops here at the read line. Read line means you're waiting for the user to do an input. So really, this whole thing should stop at 19. So let's go ahead and run it. And there it is. We have value of A colon 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19. The thing you need to be aware when dealing with the do loop is that it actually runs at least one time. So maybe you want to check A first before you run it. So this will not do that. This will run regardless of what A is, and then it evaluates it last. If you want to evaluate A first, you may want to use a while loop instead of a do while loop. So how can we convert this to a while loop? It's fairly easy. We start off with the keyword while. We already have our variable up there, A. So I'm just going to go ahead and start off with the while. I want to check and see if A is greater than 20. There's our while loop. And now all we have to do is this same thing in here and same thing there. Now what this is going to do is going to evaluate A first before it runs. So let me go ahead and remove this. And add that console read line down there. And now I'm going to run it. And as you can see, I get the same results. However, if I were to say, because it's checking to see if A is less than 20. If I were to say A equals 20, that's not less than 20. So what should I get? I should get nothing. Exactly. If A was 19, it's going to evaluate A first. And it'll run 19 because 19 is less than 20. So this is how a while loop works. It evaluates the variable first, and then it runs the loop. And it'll keep on running. Both of the loops, all the loops, run until the loop discovers that the variable is true, until the statement is true. So as long as the statement is true, then it'll keep running. If the statement becomes false, then it stops running. That's basically the idea behind all loops. So a for loop is pretty simple, just as these. Right here, we're looking at these two elements that make up the loop, and everything in between is what's going to run. If I were to go ahead and create a for loop to 20, so this will do pretty much the same thing as I had up here when this equals 10. So this loop will go from 10 to 20, just like this loop went from 10 to 20, or less than 20. So here, I'm going from 10 to 20, and then I can go ahead and add that console in there. So I'm going to say console, that right line, and then I can add the value in there, console read line. Now, a lot of you, when you're not quite used to this, you don't really like erasing the stuff that you did before. You kind of want to remember some of these things. So the best thing I can tell you to do with these is just take these and make them into, let's say, like a comment. You can literally comment them out one at a time, or you can go here and select this and it'll comment everything out for you. So right now I have this for loop. I'm going to run this for loop and let's see what happens. So this for loop does basically the same thing, except it's inclusive with the 20. So we got from 10 to 20. It's inclusive. One thing I do want to address, like a lot of times when we do this, a lot of people have an issue with this process, and it seems kind of weird to them, and it's hard for them to read this. So they don't understand, and what you need to understand is that this A goes into this area here. But there's actually an easier way to do this with .NET Core. You go in front of the quotes and you put a $sign there. Now I can just go ahead and put the variable directly in there and remove all that extra stuff. So this will allow me to add variables directly into the text. So if I run this, you'll see it basically does exactly the same thing. So how could we add this within the context of a story? Well, instead of using variables, we can use actually text. And I'm not going to use the for loop for what I want to show. I'm going to go ahead and maybe comment that out. I'm going to use the while loop. So I'm going to uncomment this out by going here to this little uncomment area and uncommenting that out. Now I want to check to see if a person hits yes or no. So I'm not going to use this integer A, and I'm not going to use the integer B. I'm going to dim a string, and I want that string to be answer, and I want it to be as a string, and I want the answer to be none. All right, now here I'm going to take answer and I'm going to put answer here. So I'm checking if answer equals. So now I have a starting point for my story itself. So I'm going to go ahead and add the story part first before I even get here. So I'm going to want to have a console write line up here that actually tells the story. And we're going to make a quick story here. We're not going to make it too complicated, just so you can kind of get the idea. So let's just say we do something like this. Now I just pasted this in there from Word. So as you can see, the text goes on and on and on, and this is not really a good way to do it. However, if I go in between here, if I enter it will go to the next line. And it used to be that if you did this in Visual Basic, you'd get an error. You would have to actually add these together. But the new Visual Basics is supposed to allow this. So let's really quick check this to make sure that this works. So the first thing we should see is this. And then the next thing we should not see is this. Okay, because this says if it's yes, and right now it says none. So I'm going to run this. And yeah, it's in that exact same format, which is interesting. It never did this before, but this is great. All right, so now we can go ahead and keep this the same. Now, so this doesn't flop around to the, like, leave all this space here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to break this up by closing off those parentheses. So I have this one right here. I mean the quotes. So I got this here. And then I'm going to hit plus. So it's going to add the next row. And I'm going to put those in quotes. And I'm going to hit plus to add the next row. And I'm going to put those in quotes. This is a different way to add all these things together. So when I run this, what you would see is now something that goes on as one thing. And it loops around because the window loops around. As you can see, it kind of wraps everything around. If you know for sure you're going to want this to go down to the next level, you can do a VB new line and add plus to that. So this goes down to the next level plus this, right? Then this goes down to the next level plus this, then plus this here. Okay. So now if I were to run that by hitting F5, as you can see now I have it all in one nice paragraph. All right, so now what I want is you're in a cave. Let's see, you're in a cave. To your left, you see a dungeon door. To your right, you see the cave walls with some rubble. Straight ahead, you see a tunnel with shimmering light. All right, instead of saying yes or no, maybe I can say, so if the answer is light, this is what's going to run. You walk to the light. And I can do this more interesting. I can say you walk to the, and I'm going to do this here. And I'm going to go ahead and do that little trick that we learned earlier. And then I'm going to put answer inside of here. Okay. So if you hit light, your answer is light, then it's going to go here. Now, I need some way to check the answer. So when this pops up, I need some way for the user to check the answer. And I need some way for them to know that it's time for them to add an answer. So I'm going to put another right line here. I'm going to say, what is your answer? Now I need to read that information. Now you notice down here we use a read line almost to kind of stop the application to check something. But this read line actually checks to read the information that's coming in from the user. So we can actually take this read line and put it here. And whatever comes out of this read line, we want to put it inside the answer. So now we have the user, the read line that happens. This is just waiting for the keyboard input. And then we put it inside this answer. Now, guess who's checking that answer? This one right here. So if the person hit the while, if they hit yes, I'm a light, it's going to go into this loop, meaning you walk to the light, and then I can put something like, I'm going to put something like this, okay? And I'm going to remove this part. All right, so now you see a bone on the ground. Now, this loop jumps in here if you say light, okay? If the answer is light. Now, I'm going to take the answer and I'm going to read the line again. down here inside of this loop. That makes more sense. Now you got to keep in mind, whatever we answer in here, if it's not light, we're jumping out of this loop. Okay? So when we jump out of this loop, it's going to jump down here. I'm going to just remove that part. It's going to jump down here. And I'm also going to remove this part as well. All right. So it's going to jump down here and go to the read line. Now, after it does this read line, it goes here. Game over. The whole application is over after that point. So what we want to maybe do here is add another while loop, right? So we can add another while loop down here to say if the answer is not light or if the answer is not Q for quit. So let's say if that was Q. In here, I'm going to say if not is not. And this is the symbol for not in Visual Basic.net, VB.net. So if it's not Q. So when it jumps out of this, it's going to see if answer is not Q, it's going to jump into this. So unless the Q happens here, it's going to run this loop over and over again. And again, inside of here, I need some way to make sure this is not an infinite loop. So I keep checking answer. So we can basically do anything. So in essence, to make our application a little bit more user friendly, instead of us asking a question here, we can ask this question down here. And over here, what we can do is say, press enter. So what this will do is allow the user to press the enter key. And because the enter key will equal nothing, that means it does not equal light, meaning it's going to jump to this one. Now you see a bone, right? So what do? And you give your answer. And if the answer is not Q, it's going to move to the next thing. So if you didn't give Q, then you can go ahead and write out the person's answer down here. And basically we're doing the same thing here. And this is how you can actually make a little story into a sort of an application or a, choose your own adventure sort of story. You can get more complex in this, but what I'm trying to do is make sure I keep it as simple as possible. So let's go ahead and run this and let's see how this works. So I'm just going to run this. So the first thing I get is my introduction, and it says, what is your answer? We know that the answer is light, but let's not choose light. Let's choose door. It actually jumped into the second one, the bone one. So here it says, okay, they didn't choose light, so it skipped past that. And it went to here. While the answer is not Q, it's going to do this. So it did this anyway because the answer was not Q. So that means while I'm in here, it'll keep on going until the answer is Q. So if I hit Q, and it gave me my answer from here, right here. You walked to Q, or I should say you chose Q. You can choose Q, you can choose anything. Let's say if I chose bone or something like that. If I said bone, it'd be the same thing, right? So if I said bone, if it is bone, it's going to jump out of here. And if it jumps out of here, what I can say, great job. You get A, and I'm going to go ahead here and add the variable inside of here. So in case I want to change this later, and I'm going to go ahead and put that here, and I'm going to have answer here. And I don't want it to read line. I want it to go ahead. Actually, I'll have it read line because after that, then the game will be over. And we can tell the user that the game is over. Or story over. And I love those old movies that used to have the end with a question mark, as if they didn't know it was the end. So we'll go ahead and in that vein, keep that here. So now when I run this, if I hit light, I'm going to go ahead and run this, right? So if I hit the right thing, I can get to that first part of the story that no one else can get to. So I hit here. But if I would have just hit the regular one, I get to that second story. What do I do? What do you do? Run. No. I select run. Okay. Walk. No. Maybe bone. You selected bone. Great job. You get a bone. The end. Horrible story. Horrible application. Whoever wrote this should be fired immediately. However, it is an application and it actually does everything that we wanted to do. Now, what you want to be able to do is take your story and be able to add it whichever way you want. You know, find a unique way to be able to put these things together. Right here, I have my answer that's declared up at the top. Then I have nothing but counsel right lines with using while loops or do loops or any other kind of loop that you want to use. So hopefully this was helpful. And if you have any questions, leave them in the comment section below. And I'll see you guys next time.